It was a quiet night in a small town where Tina and her younger brother Jay lived with their parents. The moon cast a soft glow over their cozy home, and everything seemed peaceful. But as the clock struck midnight, there was a strange knock echoed through the house. Knock, knock, knock. Tina, half asleep in her bed, sat up. Who could be knocking at this hour? She rubbed her eyes and listened closely, but the house was silent again. Maybe she had imagined it. Just as she was about to lie down back, the knocking came again, this time louder and more intense. Knock, knock, knock. Tina felt a chill run down her spine. She quietly got out of bed and tiptoed to her brother's room, Jay. Jay was already awake, sitting up in his bed with wide eyes. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Tina nodded. "Stay here. I'll go check." But Jay wasn't about to let his big sister go alone. "No, I'm coming with you." They crept down the stairs together, their hearts pounding in their chests. As they approached the front door, they saw something that made them stop in their tracks. There was a shadow under the door, but no one was there. Tina and Jay exchanged nervous glances. The shadow was clearly visible, but when they peeked through the window next to the door, no one was outside. The night was calm and still, yet the shadow remained. Tina swallowed hard. "Should we open the door?" Jay shook his head quickly. "No way. What if it's a ghost?" Tina wasn't sure if she believed in ghosts, but the shadow was too strange to ignore. She reached out for the doorknob, her hand trembling. Slowly she turned it and the door cracked open. They both gasped when they saw that the shadow was still there, even though no one was standing in the doorway. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew through the house, causing the door to slam shut with a loud bang. The shadow vanished, leaving Tina and Jay in stunned silence. "What was that?" Jay whispered, his voice trembling. "I don't know," Tina replied, her mind racing. "But we need to find out." The siblings stood in the dark hallway, the only sound being their own quickened breathing. Just when they thought the strange occurrence was over, they heard faint whispers coming from somewhere inside the house. "Do you hear that?" Jay asked, clutching his sister's arm. Tina nodded, her eyes darting around the room. The whispers seemed to come from all directions, but no matter where they looked, they couldn't see anymore. It was as if the house itself was whispering to them. "Who's there?" Tina called out, trying to sound braver than she felt. But there was no response, only the continued murmuring of the unseen voices. The whispers grew louder, filling the room with an eerie echo. Tina felt a cold shiver run down her spine as the whispers seemed to form words, though she couldn't make out what they were saying. It was as if someone or something was trying to communicate with them. "Let's go back upstairs," Jay pleaded, his fear rising. Tina hesitated. Part of her wanted to run back to safety of her bed, but another part was driven by curiosity. "Wait, let's see where the whispers are coming from." The siblings followed the sound, which led them to the base of the staircase. There on the door lay an old dusty key. Tina picked it up, turning it over in her hands. The key was old and heavy, covered in rust. It didn't match any of the doors in their house. Tina examined it closely, noticing strange symbols carved into the metal. They looked like letters, but in language she didn't recognize. What do you think it opens? Jay asked, peering over her shoulder. I don't know, Tina admitted, but it has to be important if it just appear like that. The whispers continued to swirl around them, growing louder and more urgent. It was as if the house was trying to tell them something, but what? Tina suddenly remembered a room in the attic that their parents had always told them to stay away from. It's dangerous up there, their mother had warned. Never go up into that room. But now Tina couldn't shake the feeling that the key might belong to that forbidden door. She glanced at Jay, who seemed to be thinking the same thing. Do you think it opens the attic door? He asked hesitantly. Tina nodded. There's only one way to find out. The siblings made their way up the creaky stairs to the attic. The air grew colder and they climbed, and the whisper seemed to follow them, growing louder with each step. When they reached the attic, they stood before the old wooden door that their parents had always forbidden them from entry. It looked ancient, with deep cracks running through the wood, and the handle was tarnished with age. Tina took a deep breath and inserted the key into the lock. It fits perfectly, as if the key had been waiting all these years for someone to find it. She turned it, and the door creaked open with a sound that echoed through the attic. Inside the room was dark and filled with dust. Old furniture and boxes were scattered around, covered in cobwebs. But what caught their attention was a large mirror standing against the far wall. It was old and ornate, with a frame that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. Tina and Jay stepped inside, the floorboards cracking under their weight. The whispers have stopped, replaced by every silence that made the room feel even more uncertain. As they approached the mirror, they noticed something strange. Their reflections seemed different. The figure in the mirror looked just like them, but their eyes were darker, their expression more serious. And behind them in the reflection was the shadow. Tina's hand shook as she reached out to touch the mirror. The surface felt cold and unnaturally smooth. As her finger made contact, the mirror began to tremble. Suddenly, the shadow in the reflection moved, as if coming to life. It stretched and twisted, growing longer and more ominous. Before Tina and Jay could react, the mirror surface rippled like water, and a loud outwardly roar filled the room. The shadow reached out from the mirror, its form beginning to seep into the attic. Tina and Jay stepped back, their eyes wide with terror. The room grew darker, and the temperature dropped rapidly. The old furniture and boxes were lifted into the air by an invisible force. The shadow seemed to grow more solid, its shape becoming more defined. Tina's heart pounded as she looked at the mirror, where the shadow was now clearly trying to break free. "We need to get out of here," she shouted. But as they turned to flee, the door to the attic slammed shut with a deafening bang. The siblings were trapped. The shadow loomed closer, its form now taking on a distinctly humanized shape. Tina and Jay could see the vague outline of a face, twisted in anger and despair. The whisper returned, louder and more frantic, merging with the roar of the shadow. Tina reached for the door's handle, but it was locked tight. Panic set in as they realized they had no way to escape. The shadow form began to stretch towards them, and the mirror surface cracked with dark energy. Just as the shadow seemed about to envelop them, Tina noticed something glowing faintly on the mirror's frame. A small inscription that hadn't been visible before. The inscription seemed to be a message, but the shadow's presence made it difficult to read. Desperate Tina grabs Jay's hand. Look at the mirror. There is something on it. They moved closer, trying to make out the inscription. The shadow's tendrils brushed against them, making it hard to focus. The inscription seemed to be a series of symbols and a cryptic phrase to release the curse, uncover the truth within. As they struggled to understand the message, the shadow began to wrap around them, its cold touch making their skin crawl. Tina and Jay were enveloped in darkness, and the roar of the shadow filled their ear. The room seemed to spin, and just as they were about to be consumed by the shadow, the mirror surface exploded in a flash of light. The force of explosion threw Tina and Jay back and landed in a heap on the attic floor. Thank you for viewing. If you like this story, kindly like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so when I drop the part 2, you'll be the first to be notified. Thank you.